It's a great honor for me today to invite my colleague and really co-chairman of the IFTCC, Dr. Christl Vonholdt, who has worked as a pediatrician in Germany, briefly in India and in South Africa. Her special interest is child development and attachment theory. She's a former director of the German Institute for Youth and Society, and in 2004 she spoke before the Judiciary Committee of the German Bundestag, advocating for the rights of children to have both a mother and a father. She's a member of the Pediatric Psychosocial Development Committee, an external subcommittee of the American College of Pediatricians. Welcome to you, Christl.
Thank you very much. I'm going to present the history of a woman who suffered from gender dysphoria in childhood and later from transsexualism. I have known her very well for many years up until now, and I want to thank her for allowing me to present main aspects of her life story here. I changed her name as well as some small biographical details. And I'd like to apologize for any shortcomings in my English. Anna, not her real name, was born in Western Europe and when grown up, moved to Germany. She is now 48 years old. Anna is the eldest of two daughters. Her parents were married. Looking from the outside, it was a normal middle-class family. Anna's childhood was inconspicuous. However, she had always wanted to be a boy. When she was in kindergarten and about 3 to 4 years old, she already wanted to be a boy. Her female body developed normally during puberty. In hindsight, she says about her puberty, "During my years of adolescence, I frequently asked myself who or what I actually was. With regard to my gender identity, my being a woman, I did not have any guide except for my feelings. And my feelings told me I am a man. Actually, my body should be that of a man. That pressure inside of me, the desire to no longer be a woman, became increasingly unbearable. I often longed to die." After finishing school and a professional education, Anna worked as a musician in a band where she increasingly presented herself as a man. She took on a male first name, which was completely accepted by her friends. She had several sexual relationships with women, all of which ended in a very painful breakup. At the age of 25, Anna entered therapy with a female doctor who was a psychiatrist and psychotherapist. A few months later, Anna began with testosterone injections, testosterone, the male sex hormone. And soon after that, she presented herself to a leading expert in Western Europe on transgender issues. His diagnosis was, Anna is transsexual. 3 professionals, all of whom were psychiatrists and psychotherapists, confirmed in 6 expert assessments that Anna is transsexual. The psychological difficulties Anna had during her puberty, some of which she was able to tell her specialists about, for example, her constant wish to die, her suicidal thoughts, were attributed to the circumstance that Anna was suffering from gender dysphoria. She was suffering from her persistent feeling of living in the wrong body, and the treatment for this was a so-called sex change. In the specialist's reports, it says that they had found nothing out of the ordinary, neither in Anna's childhood nor in her overall mental condition. In one of the reports, it says that Anna, quote, gives a firm and convincing impression in her self-expression as a man. Soon a male first name was entered into Anna's passport, and shortly after that, Anna had her so-called sex reassignment surgeries, that is the removal of her breasts, her uterus, and her ovaries. About her therapy before she went on to the surgeries, Anna says in hindsight, the therapist didn't get a single word out of me. I was silent. I did not know what to say. I was suffering quietly within myself. I had no words for my suffering, no language. What did I want? I did not know. I was simply convinced that I was a man in the wrong body. The psychological conflicts were so deep within me. One does not want to address those inner conflicts because there is no one to offer an alternative perspective, such as maybe there is an option other than hormones and surgery. And what lies underneath the surface is so terrible that one doesn't want to look at it. 6 months after her surgeries, Anna became a Christian. She told me, one day during a quiet time of prayer, a thought came to me, and I asked myself how God created me, whether He made me man or woman. In that moment, I knew deep inside myself that I was a woman. But the thought was still too difficult for me. I needed another entire year before I could make the decision, yes, I want to live as a woman again. It was the most difficult decision in my life. The thought of facing my parents as a woman was almost unbearable. I felt so ashamed. In order to be able to go on her path of change, Anna moved to another geographical location where she had found desperately needed new resources. She found a new therapist, a man who worked with transactional analysis and did a lot of inner child work with her. She found a female pastoral advisor to whom she could gradually open up, and very important too, she found new Christian friends. Anna says in hindsight, when I told my therapist before the surgeries that everything was fine with me and my family, I was convinced of that. In reality, my inner wounds, my inner terror and pain were so huge that I had completely suppressed them. I had to suppress them in order to survive. The detransitioning process of Anna took about 6 years, and it was another 4 years before she could say that she really enjoys being a woman. Gradually, step by step, she could face her inner wounds. Some quotes from Anna. I had to learn that my wounds were a reality, that they were true. I had to feel the pain and deprivation, and I had to learn to cry. I had to mourn the things that never were. I had to learn to give room for my anger against so many unfair and painful things in my life. When I learned to express my buried anger, it became an important means of strength to escape from the prison that had always prevented me from showing myself, my real self, to the world. About her childhood, Anna says in hindsight, my childhood was filled with shame, fear, and insecurity. A typical situation I recall, my mother and I were in a department store. I must have been 7 or 8 years old. I was running around among the clothes racks until my mother called me, Anna. When I heard my name, I felt tremendous shame. Looking back at my childhood, I have a picture in my mind. I'm lying on the diaper changing table, and my mother is looking at me with love. But in the next moment, all of a sudden, she looks at me in a powerful, aggressive manner, like a wolf, her hair standing on end. I am full of fear and terror. To me, my mother was like a monster, unpredictable and destructive. I always longed for her, but it was dangerous to approach her. The atmosphere around her was characterized by aggressiveness. She would slap me in the face without any reason at all. At some point, I started to duck when she would just as much as raise an arm. The atmosphere at home was always tense. It is true, I never wanted to be a girl, I always wanted to be a boy. But in reality, I never wanted to be at all. My main conflicts were, I am not right. I must not show myself. I am drowning in shame. Regrettably, Anna's father was no support for Anna's development either. Anna describes him as a sexually addicted man. Anna says today, my father was surrounded by a sexualized atmosphere. I've often asked myself if there was any sexual abuse at an early point in my life, but I have no evidence of that. The sexualized atmosphere Anna's father spread certainly contributed to the shame Anna felt about herself. She never felt at ease in his arms. When Anna was 12 years old, there was a sexual assault on her by her father, a clearly inappropriate touching, but it was a single event. Anna says, neither my father nor my mother were able to do anything to affirm me as a person. From my father, I got the message that women are worthless. For more than 15 years during my childhood, I suffered from the same horrible nightmares. As a child and an adolescent, I would often sit in my room and cry. I did not know why. Can we have the picture? For many years, Anna was haunted by the thoughts of suicide. She had a strong compulsion towards self-destruction, as we can see in the picture here, which she painted during her journey of detransitioning. Anna, the real Anna, is drowned. And the words underneath say, it's in German, not being, hatred, no love, death, not being wanted, shame, despised, filth, swamp. It's a picture of a deeply traumatized woman. I will come back later to that. What helped Anna on her journey? A few glimpses. Again, quotes from her. It took me a long time to build trust, to not always have to be nice, but to be authentic, to have the courage for a dispute and an open conflict, to catch up in the development of my emotional intelligence, to accept help, to become more and more honest, to be able one day to tell someone about my deepest feelings, and to have the experience that when I say something, no matter what, I'm taken seriously and I'm not judged or condemned. Again, some quotes from her. One day again, I felt tremendous pain welling up inside me about my mother. It was so painful that I just screamed, and that happened several times. I was with a friend. She was very motherly. She had to close the window so that no one would hear me screaming. While I was experiencing this incredible pain, she took me in her arms and I felt I am not alone. Somebody understands me. Somebody holds me. I can now allow myself to feel the pain and accept it. There was comfort and healing in that. What Anna experienced was, I am being held. I am allowed to be. Especially through therapy, Anna learned to feel feelings like shame, anger, pain, sadness, fear, helplessness, self-hatred, abandonment, and deep loneliness. However, those feelings then welled up in her so massively that she became depressed and more than once did not want to go on living. She therefore decided to spend 6 weeks in a psychiatric hospital which offered body-oriented therapies. There she lost her fear of her emotions. Today she says, I can cope with what I feel inside of me. One experience from her hospital time, and again a quote from her. During one of my therapeutic exercises, I saw a picture in my mind. There was a trash can, and I had been thrown into it. In the therapeutic session, I literally climbed out of that trash can and made a renewed decision to live my life. I said aloud, I am Anna, and this time I am going to stay here. This ability to let myself be seen was a prerequisite for my ability to receive more love from other people and from God. About 6 years into her journey, Anna applied for the official restitution of her female first name so that her girl's name would be back in her passport. The same transgender specialist whose assessment had led her the way to sex reassignment surgery now issued a report for her so that Anna could have her girl's name, which reflected her true self, back in the official papers. In the conversation with Anna, he admitted, I have never met anyone who was really happy after the surgeries. And Anna adds, it's a deceptive package because my problems had not been solved. Today, about 10 years later, Anna says, I don't suffer anymore. I like to be a woman. I don't have to wait anymore for anyone to give me permission to be. I am who I am. Some general considerations at the end. There's no evidence that transsexual feelings are inborn or genetically determined, and there are also no brain studies that would support this idea. Anna was a deeply traumatized woman. Besides her difficult and probably traumatic relationship with her father, she suffered from an attachment trauma, an early relational trauma in the relationship with her mother in the first 2 years of her life. We know from infant research that the mother's face is the most potent visual stimulus in the child's world, especially during infancy. And remember her picture of lying on the diaper changing table and this unpredictable, aggressive face of the mother. It is well known that direct gaze can mediate not only loving but powerful aggressive messages. This is extremely traumatizing for a small child. The image of the aggressive face as well as the infant's bodily reaction to it are stored in the autobiographical memory. Anna once said, I see a picture in my mind. It's a house which is burning on the inside. It's not burning on the outside, only on the inside. I step into this house and I'm standing in the midst of the harsh flames. Actually, one would normally think I would have to scream like hell, but I don't feel anything at all. I'm very sad that I do not feel anything and that I'm not able to get out of myself. This is an inner picture of overwhelming stress. When an infant experiences overwhelming stress, it experiences frantic distress and reacts with panic, fear, terror, fear of death, and then dissociation, which is no feelings anymore. And I experienced that unpredictably, again and again. So her traumatic experiences were chronic and cumulative, not a one-time event. Under overwhelming stress and the chaotic bodily reactions to it, an infant cannot develop a secure sense of self, maybe no sense of self at all. The leading American brain researcher and expert in attachment theory, Alan Shore, writes, traumatic attachment experiences in the first 2 years of life negatively impact brain development, and that's about the right brain, the feeling brain, and negatively impact the child's sense of self. It may even produce deficits in identifying a corporeal image of self. Anna's name, and we see this in the picture here, was synonymous for her with annihilation, with destruction of the person she was. And the wish to be a boy may have very well been a defense mechanism against this feeling of fear terror, of fear of death, of not being allowed to be, of not being allowed to develop her real self. Anna once said, I am free floating in space, with no foothold, no ground beneath my feet, no security. Fortunately, that all changed. Today, Anna says, maybe some people think the diagnosis transsexuality was wrong. However, it was not wrong. I was transsexual. It was just that there was something else lying deep beneath this surface. Anna is not the only woman with a transgender problem whom I have known. They all taught me we need more psychotherapy for transgender issues, not less. Thank you.